Two guys either side of 50 with one dream to achieve middle-aged sporting glory. This is the Missing Links Golf Show. Pilgrims, here we are again. This is episode 41 of the Missing Links Golf Show. I'm Steve Hinks. Andy Walker, welcome back.
We are edging towards raising that bat at 50.
I wonder if we can somehow organise a Missing Links Golf Show cricket bat.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
Leave it with me. We'll look into that. But approximately
You'll have to get
9
two, though,
weeks.
because, we've got to have
I
like
know.
one, given we don't record in the same location,
I know.
and we're quite a number of hours apart. I
I
reckon
know.
that we
I know.
we may need to.
That's tricky. We'll have to figure that out. Anyway, we're not here to talk about bespoke cricket bat design. We're here to
No.
talk about golf. And today, it's not just us that are here to talk about golf. We've got a special guest that's about to join the show for this episode. Andy Walker, who is that?
Look, this guest, really pumped to have him on the show. It's been a little while in the making. But yeah, podcast that we both listen to, a gentleman by the name of Evan Singer, who is the co-host of the Par Train. And
Nice.
yeah, got a lot of really good information on his show, and we both get a lot of good stuff from it.
Yeah, it is a good show. There's a lot of similarities actually between the Par Train and the Missing Links Golf Show insofar as it's two guys. That
They're not
play
either
golf.
side of 50, though. They're a bit younger than
No,
us.
they're a bit younger. They are a bit younger than us. But in fairness, they play a similar standard of golf to us, between the two of them, between Evan and Matt. So I think there's a lot of parallels that can certainly be drawn. And I'm sure there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from their experiences, and potentially a few that they can learn from our experiences. But more importantly, lessons that pilgrims can learn from everybody's experiences. That was a long-winded way of saying that there could be some good information in this discussion. But Andy Walker, I'm excited. Are you excited?
I'm excited. Let's jump to it.
Let's do it. All right. See you on the other side, pilgrims. Andy Walker, an exciting one today. We have got Evan Singer from the Par Train joining us on the show. So, Evan, welcome to the Missing Links Golf Show.
Thank you. It's always fun being on the other side.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, I think always a good place to start is just to give you the floor for a couple of minutes and maybe tell the pilgrims who you are, what you do, what your background is, your relationship to golf, all those sorts of fun things. So we might throw to you for a sec.
Sure. So we've been doing the Par Train podcast for over 8 years now, which is crazy. I actually met Matt, my co-host. We call him Serm. His last name is Cermak. He comes from a family that's really well known in the golf community in Chicago, Illinois, back in the States, where all four boys played D1 college golf. And I was joking with someone this morning. Someone told me that who grew up with him, he would, kind of limp into the tournament shooting 81, and he'd always hear about a Cermak shooting 63 or 64. And so my best friend growing up was Matt Cermak's best friend in college. So we got brought together through our mutual best buddy and gave a speech at our buddy Ryan's wedding. It went pretty well, if I have to say so myself. There might have been a blonde wig involved, with some acting and full body miming, maybe, I guess you could call it. And we were like, something, we got something here. I wouldn't say that many podcasts start from a wedding speech, but it did for us. And we started the show, and I think my favorite part of the show is, there's a million different ways to get better at golf. Everyone's got different goals. Everyone wants to shoot lower scores. But just like anything, what's the point of spending the time, spending the money, being away from family if you don't enjoy it when you're out there? So
Mm.
the par train's really about helping frustrated golfers enjoy the ride again. That's our mission. But we also say on the show, if you can smile through bad golf, you can smile through anything, because we all know what it's like when nothing's going your way. And we were talking off air that nobody really cares when you play bad golf, and it kind of seems silly from afar, especially from a non-golfer, to see how upset and down you can truly feel after a bad round. But I will tell you, I've experienced years of bad rounds. And that is a place where you can really get into some dark places, because I think it's easy for us to compare ourselves versus our best self anytime something's going bad. And it's really easy to hear about guys on tour getting in slumps, right? And it's like, well, where'd it go? What happened? Jordan Spieth, right? Good example. Like, guy couldn't lose, and now it's like, how long is it going to take till he wins? Rory as well. So it's like, I think it's easy to do that, but now being on the other side a little bit, I think that's what the show's about. It's about relatable stories from anyone like you and me to a tour pro or a top sports psychologist. And it's trying to help people understand what they're doing, get out of their own way, and enjoy the ride again. And the principles you can learn in that process ideally can be put for any experience in life. So that's the goal. Let's enjoy it, right?
Mm.
I sort of feel as though we've ended up in a fairly similar place, Evan, in that what you just said, it revolves around your mental approach to golf and how you deal with it mentally. I mean, Steve and I, we started off, with our aim to play senior amateur golf and tournament golf. But then we've sort of come through this mental golf journey of just dealing with whether it be not being able to play because you're busy in life, or a personal challenge comes up. I'm injured at the moment, so I haven't been able to play for a couple of months. That's been incredibly frustrating, or just going through a slump on the golf course. So because part of your show, the Par Train, is about that mental side and getting through those mental demons that seem to come up quite often. I was going to say time to time, but pretty often they come up.
Yeah, totally. And you know what's interesting about that? And should I call you Andy or Andrew?
Andy.
Andy? Okay. What's interesting is, I think a lot of people, we talked about this on our latest episode. I think a lot of people don't even know what the mental game is. And the idea of a mental game isn't sexy. It's not something that a 20 handicap thinks applies to them, right? I think a lot of people think, well, this is pre-shot routines. This is, you know, breathing into the ball, as I step into the shot. I think it sometimes it can come off like this legs crossed meditation type thing, that how can you say that that's going to help me when my swing is messed up? And I just want to start today by saying I have seen the other side. I have I have worked maybe harder than anybody on, quote, fixing my flaws in my swing. I roll it inside and I roll it open. And the comments are amazing. I ask people, how do you want to celebrate 100,000 followers on Instagram, which is coming up? And I got probably 8 comments that said, fix your takeaway, right? And, I think it's this, if I'm going onto the golf course feeling flawed, and I think that the inside takeaway is the reason why I'm having a two-way miss and all of these problems, then, and I'm thinking of 4 different things in my swing, that is a lot of interference,
Yeah.
right? And this last 2 rounds, I've done an experiment where I haven't thought about anything. I literally look at the ball and I say, hit the ball, right? Be an athlete, but I didn't know what that meant before. Now I look at the ball, my job is to hit it. I've been an athlete my whole life, just hit it. And shot even par on the back nine for the first time,
Wow.
trying this
Awesome.
idea, trying this experiment. And so that was really eye-opening to me because it's not the flaw was still there,
Mm.
but I also figured out how to get it around
Yeah.
because I allowed it to emerge. So I just wanted to share that story because I think a lot of times people think the mental game is about all of these like very non-sexy processes and tactics and habits, which they are. But a lot of times I find that the quote mental game is really just finding what helps you, what happened when you played your best, how are you wired as a person, and then how can you do everything in your power to get out of your way and allow that guy or gal to emerge. I think that is really what the mental game has become for me lately.
Mm. Yeah, that's really, really interesting perspective. So, talking about a lot of people not understanding the mental game and what a strong mental game means. I and Andy Walker, we were talking about my dad last night in our message chat. Um, yeah, excuse me. He's Evan, early 80s. He's always been into sport his whole life. And he's been playing golf for probably the last 30 years. And with all due respect, love my father dearly. The golf that he's been playing for the last 30 years has been pretty awful and hasn't improved no matter how much he's approached it. And whenever I do have the conversation with him about the mental side of the game, there's a complete shutdown. The guy's old school about no, your sporting ability is your sporting ability. It's innate. You can work hard. You can do these things, but no amount of thinking about it's going to make any difference. And just because you want something badly enough is not going to help. And just that complete um, lack of desire to understand the impact of the mental side of the game, I find quite remarkable. So someone like that, of course, we're not going to probably reach and make a change with. But for people that are out there that are kind of going, oh, maybe this is interesting, maybe there's something in this, but I genuinely don't know where to start. Like, if you went back to some of the lessons you've learned over your journey, what do you think are the big, one or two or three epiphanies that you've had that you go, yeah, that's actually what the mental game is. You just talked about the clearing your mind of thoughts and being reactive. That's a really good point. But like, what are some of those sort of steps that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, maybe I'll direct this towards your dad too, because what I was
Yeah.
thinking when you're saying that is like, well, I wouldn't start with saying it's the mental game. I would say, do you want to get better? Yes or no? All right, let's think about what you're doing, right? On in a poor round, and let's think about what you did in a really good one. Um, I
You might not
think,
have had a really good one to talk about though, Ev, is the
well,
problem.
maybe a good hole, right? um, I think, because I do coaching too on the mental side, and I think the thing that really jumps out, and I would highly recommend it, and this is not a an ad or a plug. It's actually a super valuable resource that's free for people. It's called Mental Golf Type. And I use it as kind of a foundational system in my coaching, but it's really helped me. I had to look in the mirror. I was like, wait, let's look at myself, as my own student. I don't think I'm practicing what I'm preaching. So I kind of took a step back and I went back and looked at my mental golf type. Essentially, what it is, you go to mentalgolftype.com. It's like a 5-minute free assessment. And if you guys have heard of like Myers-Briggs personality test, everybody's got a type, 4-letter type, right? Um, this is a system that's been designed specifically for golf. And so what I notice in my coaching and now in my own game is I would say pretty often I would say 70% of the time, when someone's really struggling and it's like getting dark and I don't want to talk to anyone the whole day after the round, you're thinking about it for the next week, right? I think we've all been there. Usually, more times than not, you are bringing someone on the golf course that is different than the person you bring in every other scenario in your life. So, like, let me give you an example. I coached a surgeon at UCLA for a year or so, and he was an 8 handicap when we started. Now he's a 2 or a 3, and he belongs to a great club here. in Los Angeles, and we looked at his mental golf type, and as a surgeon, surgeons are very confident in their skill set, but they know things emerge, things pop up, and when things pop up, you have to be able to then go to your toolbox and your toolkit and say, so for example, like if something pops up with me, I know I probably got quick. I either got tentative or I got really excited, right? And I probably got quick in the process. So slowing down might be an example of something in my toolkit that I go back to, right? That I know helps me. For my player who is a surgeon, you know, he was trying to go in with a very strict plan and didn't want anything that not according to plan to emerge at all. So when
Mhm.
something went against his plan, he got really stressed out and he got really frustrated. But we talked about it. He said, well, what happens when something doesn't go according to plan in the OR? He said, well, it happens all the time. I just go back to my training and I know that I can do and check X, Y, or Z. And I said, okay, well, let's give you a same toolbox so that the way you're naturally wired shows up in the golf course, right? Here's another good example. He's a very technical guy. So for me, this is why you can't really have like all size, one size fits all golf tips, because what I just described of thinking nothing might be terrible for one of you guys. So I'll give you an example with the surgeon. So he's a pretty technical guy. Everything you see in golf is about picking a target, right? He had this, I feel like a lot of people go to the golf course and we have this should mentality of, well, I do this because I probably should. And I assume most people, you got to fixate on your target. You got to really focus on your target. Well, his mental golf type, you're supposed to be more player side, not target side. I'm the opposite. So Tiger's player side. So when you watch Tiger or Xander play a round of golf, they're not really like fixated on their target. They might look up for a couple seconds, but if you time their routine over the ball, they spend the majority of their time over the ball looking down. And then they have a player side feel that they replicate, right? Whether that's their rhythm, getting in the right hip, like whatever their player side swing driven thing is, that's better for them. Looking out of the target for someone like them might get in their way, make them think of unwanted outcomes, get into the future. It might be really bad. For me, I'm the exact opposite, right? I need to see the shot out in the target and have zero worry about how I'm going to do it. Like I need to step into the shot and replicate what I see. So we did that for the surgeon that I coach, and his driving was like transformed, right? He didn't go into the shot. We try and find those little things that you're like, I'm doing this. Something feels uncomfortable, probably because I'm doing it because someone told me to, or I have some preconceived notion that I should. So giving him permission to do something that's wired for him provided a lot of freedom. And he was able to just start hitting more solid drives, hitting more fairways, less tentative, because we gave him a toolkit and a routine that is matching who he is and his personality. And I think that's the biggest thing is like, you got to be the person you are in life on the golf course.
Yeah, look, we've both done that mental golf type test. We actually were lucky enough to have John Weir on the show
Oh, yeah.
earlier in the year, and it is transformative. But it's, I mean, I actually bought the program and completed level one. But that's for me, that's a really good reminder because I haven't actually completed the rest of the course as yet. I've just sort of life gets in the way and you just get caught up doing other stuff. But it's a really good analogy because with the surgeon, I mean, he can't hit it out of bounds, effectively, because that has pretty dire consequences on the guy
Yeah,
that or girl that he's operating on, right? So he's got to have
Right.
that toolkit in his back pocket.
Right.
that's a good point.
And Andy, I would say that not everybody needs to go through courses or assessments. I think literally just understanding, like, how do I know when I'm moving into stress
Mm,
and what makes me at my best? Right. So as an extrovert for me, when I get quiet, that's a red flag for me.
Yeah.
I know I'm getting stressed. So then what is my 1 to 2 keys that I go back to?
Mm.
Right. You got to have something to lean on. I think a lot of people have this misnomer in anything, not just golf, that um it's either all good or it's all bad, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
either I focused the whole round or I did a really bad job focusing. Well, that's not really how it works. I'd say 99.9% of the time, it's just moving from focus to lost focus to refocusing, negative thought to more positive thought, right? And it's this movement of resetting. And
Yeah.
that's really the game.
Yeah.
It's not being perfect or
Mm.
or avoiding something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and look, Steve and I have found that we are complete opposites
Yep.
in our mental golf type. Like I'm an introvert, and I'm sort of similar to sort of Xander and Tiger, because that's how I see my game. I'm a sensing type, so I'm need to be within myself when I'm playing, whereas Steve is the opposite to that. In he's extroverted and needs to sort of be more outward focused, which has presented sort of challenges for him.
What's actually interesting, and I think we are somewhat similar in golf type because I was listening to a recent episode of yours where you were talking through your golf type. So I'm at ENTP, which is not quite the same but similar.
Yeah, I'm an
And
ENFP. So
yeah,
you're a thinker, I'm a feeler. That's the one
yeah,
difference.
yeah. So it's pretty close. What I found, which was really interesting when I did the mental golf type, is that I was forever being put off by what was happening around me. Whether that was the behavior of playing partners or whether that was what was going on in other groups, or even being, incredibly mindful of speed of play of where our group was in relation to other groups, or just hearing
Yeah.
things that's going on around. And always found it really difficult to kind of then pull my focus back into play the shot. So I would get frustrated with myself for that and accuse myself of being mentally weak because I was allowing these external factors to impact on what was going on. And then that snowballs, right? You start
Yeah.
getting frustrated, it starts getting worse. One of the big epiphanies out of looking at the mental golf type was to say that that's actually just who I am. That's my personality type. I'm going to be uh, like more liable to notice what's going on around me. And therefore, rather than fighting it, just accepting it and letting it wash over and then resetting and going was a massive difference. So now when I'm hearing playing partners chatting behind me, rather than kind of fixating on that and trying to block it out, I go, that's cool. They're chatting.
Yeah.
That's fine. That doesn't have to impact what I'm doing. And I can just then focus and go again. So, and it was also funny because I remember early rounds with Andy Walker that he didn't want to talk to me on the golf course, and I thought that I'd upset him, and that actually really put me off. So it was kind of funny. So I think learning about ourselves, not only does it help you golf, but it helps you enjoy your golf, which is a really important thing.
Yeah. I've recently learned this, a very valuable lesson myself, that I think every time I've gotten stuck or been really dissatisfied, more times than not, it was not necessarily the situation or the person that said something to me or the golf score or the mistake that I made. It was the judgment of myself for either not being able to shake it off or getting frustrated at it. Right. And
Yeah.
it's a true practice. And I think, you have to you can't do any of this without the awareness of what triggers you. and what you do well. So like I joked on the podcast the other day that my wife said to me in Hawaii on our baby moon, she goes, you're you're such a good sand player. Every time I see you in the sand, you like put it like 10 feet or less. Like you're a very consistent, good sand player. And I just remember thinking, I am kind of good out of the sand. I think I think I was always frustrated on being in the sand.
Yeah.
And we're so critical on our of every parts of our game. Doesn't matter how good you are, you always think you can get better at it. So the idea of literally taking a step back and complimenting yourself of what you do well on the golf course, I was like, yeah, I am a good sand player. And then I'm like, wait, I made like 6 5-footers today. I think I'm a pretty good putter, you know? And like I had never said that to myself in like 18 years of playing the game. And then
Mm.
suddenly you start playing your future rounds and it's like, yeah, I hit in the bunker. Fine with me. I'm a good sand player, right? It's like it actually makes a difference. But if you don't know what you do well and you don't know what triggers you, and you're just going from pattern to pattern, habit to habit, negative thought to negative thought, that's when you pick your head up and you feel like you blacked out and this terrible round just happened and you have
Mm.
no idea why. And then there's no way to get better from that. So awareness, really going back to your original question, you have to have some level of awareness of what you're doing before you can make any changes.
So I think the answer, to go back to that original question, next time I hang out with my dad, I need to get the laptop out and we just need to accidentally go through the mental golf type, mental fitting and see who he is. Because I'm actually now really interested to see what his profile comes out as.
Yeah, he might be. So, like to compare your dad to me,
Yeah.
if I'm an ENFP, so that's an extroverted, intuitive feeler perceiver, and we don't have to spend the whole thing on
Yeah.
mental
Yeah.
golf type, but I do think it
Yeah.
is a good kind of framework to explore this stuff in. If you look at that versus maybe Andy's, not one of my facets of my personality is technical, not
Mm.
one. So then why am I thinking
Mm.
about wrist angles or my takeaway and my downswing feel and treating everything so systematically and technically on the golf course, right? Like that isn't 100% the opposite of everything that I do well. So for your dad, there might be something that he's doing that is totally the opposite of him. And what do we do? This is important for people to know. There's one situation that you do the opposite of how you're wired, and that's in stress. It's not like one or the other. It's like it's dominant versus non-dominant, right? Like we use our left hand in some things, but it's not our dominant hand. Same thing with our personalities. So, that'd be a real fun exercise for you to do to see like, ooh, I wonder what part of him is he in stress? He doesn't even realize it. And he's bringing someone different to the course every time and expecting a good result when that's against everything he does naturally.
Mm. Look out, Donnie. Mental golf type's coming for you.
But it's a really interesting comparison, Ev, because my dad and Steve's dad, they're only a couple of days apart, right? And it's quite interesting because Steve and I have known each other for 20 something years, 24, 25 years, and after we met and we became mates, both our dads met and became mates as well. So it was a really cool dynamic, but. My dad has, because he listens to our podcast pretty often, and he's gone through this mental game journey with us as well. But he's sort of been the opposite in that he's taken a lot of the stuff on board, and he's been really open and had that growth mindset to a point where earlier in the year he went out and played 9 holes and shot even par, and he was 81 at the time and first time in his life that he's ever shot even par for 9 holes of golf.
Wow.
But one of the big concepts that's been sort of, one of the foundational concepts for him, as it has been for me, is the notion of acceptance on
Mm.
the golf course. And I think that really plays in well with mental golf type, and being able to just leave behind those mistakes that you're always going to make on the golf course.
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing about acceptance is it's really hard. It's really easy for some. It's almost impossible for others. And the impossible moments are the interesting ones because that reveals, again, every emotion is information. So, like for me, I used to lose, I'd say 6 balls around just off the tee, right? Just would have a foul ball. And everything about coming into the round was trying to prevent a foul ball, right? If I could just keep it in play, I'd be breaking 80 consistently,
Yeah.
right? We've all have something like that, 3 putts, out of bounds, etc. And when something like that plagues you for so long and you demonize it because it's clearly like you can't deny that that's happening. Um, and someone would say, well, how is my brain making that? That's another topic we can get into. But my point, Andy, is you can't tell that guy to accept 6 balls OB because he's going to say, well, yeah, that's easy for you to say, but like this is ruining my score. And I'm sick of being the guy dropping for 3 when everyone else is out on the fairway having fun, right? That was me. The interesting thing is finding a way to get to acceptance in like an almost inadvertent kind of diagonal way. So like this experiment I did that without me realizing it until I talked to my own coach about it. It's on YouTube. It's very silly, but I almost canceled this round with my 3 buddies because I just came off just terrible golf and I didn't know what to do. I was like, I don't know. I've tried all these different things. None of it's working. I don't know what to go to the course with. And then I'm like, wait a minute. This is exactly what we want to do for the passengers. So put your ego aside, go to this round with your 3 buddies, and don't just say to yourself, just try and enjoy it. Because, like, again, if I've had all of this past pain, you can't just tell me, just shake it off. It's like Brett McCabe, sports psychologist of John Rahm and many others, said you can't tell a soldier in Iraq to act like it's North Carolina.
Mm.
It's not. But here's what happened. I said, all right, guys, I'm going to try and play golf with zero swing thoughts. And if I get technical, you have permission to slap me in the face with a tortilla. Just something so silly, but it was for YouTube. And I'm like, this is going to be, see how I say it's an experiment? It's an interesting experiment. So now I have no expectations of what that round's going to bring because I'm trying something new and I'm giving myself permission to make mistakes. The other beautiful thing about that experiment without realizing it was I was now the one laughing with them instead of feeling like I was being laughed at,
Yeah.
right? I
That's
was a
huge.
part of the joke.
Mm.
So now I went like the first 6 holes with no swing thoughts. And I'm like, I'm starting to want to mess up because this is a video,
Yeah.
like I don't know what it says about me, but I kind of wanted to get slapped by a tortilla in the face. Like I wanted to for the video, I wanted it for the experience, for the laughs, whatever. So I got slapped a few times. And the back nine is when I shot even par. And it was just like, wow, that is the first time that I brought a game, humor, and some lightness to this thing that was so heavy. Like I wasn't trying to make it heavy, but it's this game I really care about. I do this for a living and I can't seem to get better. What's wrong with me? Right. So I was gripping too hard on it. And for the first time, I removed a lot of the cobwebs. I allowed myself to be an athlete, but I think the most impactful thing was having the freedom to accept bad outcomes because it was an experiment and we made a fun kind of outcome and game out of it. And so I would ask people, like, really think about how can you gamify something? How can you make something a bet or a joke? If you're bringing a lot of seriousness to something, that's probably a better strategy than just saying just accept it, because you tell that to a guy or a gal who's really frustrated on something, you can't tell them to accept it because that's the point of all the pain. Right. So it's an important distinction, but it was a really fun experiment to see that.
It's a really cool story. There's a few things in there. There's a lot in there. And the acceptance point, I'll come back to in a moment. But something else that really strikes me that I think the three of us get, maybe some of our listeners don't get, and that is, Ev, this is what we do. This is what we go through to bring entertainment to the people. Okay. Like
Yeah.
and there's something beautiful about that. And it does. Like I've found put another lens on the rounds of golf that you play, because you know that you're going to have to get behind the microphone and tell the story about it come, Monday morning or Tuesday night or whatever.
Yeah.
But the acceptance point that you talk about and what you did there is actually crossing that barrier between accepting the result of the shot after you've hit it versus the way more powerful piece, which is accepting the potential results of the shot before you hit it. And that's the bit that really frees you up to be able to put a swing on it, because it's one thing to go, oh, I accept it because I've hit a bad shot. I'll accept the outcome and I'll go find it and hit it again. But that pre-shot acceptance, I think that's what actually enables you to swing more freely and access your skill set, because you're not worrying about the potential outcome of the shot before you hit it.
Yeah. And it's also, what is your outcome? What are you considering the outcome?
That's
Right.
right.
Because you could create a different outcome where, I joke with my co-host. It's like whatever gets you pissed off gives you a lot of information. So if I block one high right, that's my least favorite. Used to be my Achilles heel, like I talked about. So that thing, you're gonna see me feel it. But if I hit, if I hook it a little, but it was like a really strong drive, I'm not gonna be mad about hitting it left because I struck it okay. So clearly, ball striking is the thing that is my outcome without even realizing it. So to change that to committed, focused, having more fun, having a plan, not getting technical, right? Those could now be my scorecard. So to your point, Steve, like it might be easier to respond after a quote poor outcome as long as I did the other things
Mm.
or made a note on my scorecard of the thing I didn't do that I was trying to, and now on the next shot I can try to do it. Versus just getting pissed off all around because the shot didn't match my expectations. Well, how many shots go exactly where we want?
It also, I
Not
think,
many.
comes back to, and you bring it back even further, in why are you playing golf?
Yeah.
Is it to go out there and frustrate yourself? Or is it to go out and have fun? Fun's an interesting word because I always used to resist the word fun with golf. And
Mhm.
my wife
In,
always used
in
when
your
I
whole life, Andy Walker, I think it's fair to
yeah,
say.
yeah, fun's not my life. But I used to come home from golf and my wife used to say, "Oh, did you have fun?" And I'm like, I never used to go out, don't go out to golf and have fun. I go out there to compete and to challenge myself and to really push my boundaries and to see how good I can get. But then after and it was sort of this journey that Steve and I have been on that's really I guess, made me aware of why I go out and play golf. And it is to actually have fun. It's to, meet new people and to have conversations and, also just getting out of the house and getting away from work and that mental release of being out there on the golf course and in fresh air and amongst nature. So I think if it's acceptance also sort of you've got to come back to the notion of why you're out in the golf course and why you're playing golf in the first place.
Yeah, I love that. It also helps to have a couple reasons too. Because I was like you, Andy. I used to have my reason being challenging myself, right? So I'd almost see it like a meditation, even though that sounds cliche. Like I would just love, I would love the challenge of stepping up to a shot when my hands are shaking and I just missed one way right. And I just refocus really hard on something productive and I pull it off. Like that is such a gratifying
Yeah.
thing. But then if my only why is overcoming those challenges and the mental challenge, and I have a round where I do everything poorly, it's really easy for that to go south, right? So having a couple things like just being outside, right? I think hitting one great shot is a great one for everyone, right? Like the goal is to just hit one on the nose, one, and take that with you.
Mhm.
And there's nothing like it. Like I love that feeling. That is just such a cool feeling to be able to see something in your head and to do it a second later in real life is like so cool to me. So yeah, that's a great point. Got to have a why or maybe two.
Mm. It is a good point. And I think, for me, I've become quite caught up in the improvement process over the last, well, during our pilgrimage, definitely, trying to get my handicap down to a competitive level. Like that's always an outcome marker that you've got sitting there as well that adds pressure to a round. And therefore, when things start to go badly in a round, that can sometimes be difficult to pull that back because that outcome is slipping away. So I like that point about having multiple whys about why you're out there. So like if on a given day one of them potential is not happening, at least there's other reasons that you're getting enjoyment out of it. And you're right though, Evan, like just that feeling of hitting a golf ball, that's addictive. That
Yeah.
that moment in the round when you absolutely smoke one straight up the middle, that's the bit that keeps you coming back.
Can I tell a quick story on outcomes?
Please.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to be on a local ESPN radio show this morning. And I was talking to the host and he talked to me about how all he wanted was to break 80 back in the day when he would play a lot. And one day he shot a 79, his first time, right? And it was one of those moments that his friend looks at him, he goes, "Did you know you shot a 79?" Of course he didn't. And I said, "How long?" So in his words, I want to do this more than anything. Break 80 more than anything. Okay? I go, "How long did you feel the joy of the 79? How long did were you in that state of euphoria?" And his answer cracked me up. He said, "Well, I played the next day and I shot a 91 and I was pissed." And I said, "Isn't that fascinating that the thing you say you wanted more than anything, you did it. And the next day, the target moved, you had new expectations, and you were pissed." So I guess the point of the story is that outcomes, goals, they're great, but we're human beings. We always want more. So the target's going to move. If you do it, that's awesome. You should celebrate it. But you're going to want to do it again, or you're going to want to go lower, or you're going to want to be more consistent, or you're going to want to shave putts, or you're going to want to do something. So finding something else in the act of it that you can enjoy, I think is so important. Otherwise, we're just chasing these targets. We hit them every once in a while. The target's going to move, and we're going to wonder why we're not feeling anything that's, that feels good for a prolonged period, feeling satisfied, feeling fulfilled. I think that's golf is an amazing reminder of that every time we play.
Mm.
So true. It's it's one of the reasons, Evan, why in the Missing Links Golf Show, which is all about searching for the missing links to better golf. It's where the name came from. But it's one of the reasons why we had originally talked about being on a journey. And then I think Andy Walker, it was about episode 14 or something like that, when we had the conversation about it actually is a pilgrimage rather than a journey. Now, what's the difference? I hear you ask. The difference is that in our mind, a journey was very much a movement from A to B. It was destination focused. It was getting to a destination. The pilgrimage, we felt that word added a level of meaning about the experiences along the way and the
Mm.
lessons learned as part of the journey and really focusing on that whole process rather than merely on the destination. So I think with that in mind, that's kind of one of the essence of this show. Um, and one of the other parts that's come out of it as well, which has been really interesting, is that we started this as a golf show, but a lot of the feedback that we've been getting and a lot of the questions that we've been getting has been more about life off the course and balancing, the work life relationship, the parenting, golf, family, work, professional relationship, and all of those elements. So I understand you've got a little bit of a life changing moment coming up in the future. How are you feeling about juggling all of those elements and still being able to pursue these golfing dreams?
It's funny. I'm having my wife and I are having our first baby in November, so a few months, baby boy. And I think for me, the biggest thing, who knows what he's going to teach me? I'm sure a million things, but the thing that comes up first as I think about being a dad is, I've learned so much stuff through practicing things with my mind and understanding myself and emotions and managing them and learning from them. And, I think we all have to unlearn some things that we either got conditioned with or learned from, family or our environments or whatever. And I think it's easy for me to fall into the trap of thinking that I can shape this little boy without needing to unlearn anything, like giving him everything from the start, And I think that probably puts an unnecessary amount of pressure and makes it a little bit too formulaic of like molding someone and teaching someone versus just being there and loving him, and celebrating conversations where he feels like he can talk to us and learn things and celebrate learning from bad things, you know? So I think that's an interesting thing for me as I go into this phase of like, let's just be there. I don't need to worry about messing him up. Like what I say, I'm sure I will in some ways from whatever I'm carrying that I pass to him. But um, yeah, just having a house and a home that celebrates growth and understanding and conversation, I think is a better place to start. And then we'll see how I do once he's here.
I think it's certainly from my perspective, trying too hard to shape someone just
Mm.
doesn't work, right? They're
Right.
they're a human being, and I just don't think that works. I don't know, Steve's pretty similar to this. My perspective, well, I've come to the perspective of I just want to support my son to be the best version of himself,
Yeah.
and daughter as well. I've got a daughter who's 7. So both of them is just all about, okay, well, um, who do you want to be in your life, and let's support you to be the best version of that. And that's really all you can do. Just provide those opportunities, provide that platform and stability, to be able to allow them to live their life on their terms in the best possible way.
We talk a bit about guilt as parents. It's a real thing. Ev, welcome to the Parent Guilt Club. Um, it's a thing, and what that means, what I mean by that is that there's only one of you, and there's only one thing that you can be doing at any one time, and that might be working, that might be out there playing golf, that might be spending time with your family, or many other things. But in my experience, the hardest balance, which is internal, is understanding that when I'm doing one of those things, it means I'm not doing one of the others. So, so for example, when I'm at work, I'm not there with my family where I potentially want to be. When I'm on the golf course, I'm obviously not there with my family, and vice versa for all of those things. And it is so easy to mentally not be where you physically are, but to mentally be somewhere else because of that guilt factor. And as a result of that, you're actually doing a disservice to the things that you're leaving behind because you're not fully committing yourself to what you are doing during that time period. So, one of those juggles is really, really difficult, is around just going, acknowledging, going, I'm not going to be there 100% of the time physically, and that's okay. But when I am there, I need to mentally be there 100%. And when I'm doing something else, I need to actually be doing that 100% as well, because that for certainly for me was a real lesson learned about making the most of the times you can get out on the golf course. Applying yourself in a work setting when you need to, but then really being there with your family when you're there, and not thinking about work when you're with the family. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a huge one. But I think that's a lesson actually that we all need to take out of a lot of facets of life too, about being
I love
present.
that. It's not that dissimilar to Andy's point about acceptance, but someone might say to you, be present,
Mm,
right? But that's not an easy thing to action on. What do I do with that? You're probably going to judge yourself that you're not,
all the time.
right? So it's like, I like to think of things kind of in a different way. It's like, okay, well, if that's the case, then what can I observe in my existing environment and really be in awe of? Like, what can I appreciate? It's more of just an observation mindfulness practice. It's like, I once was told by a coach, you can't focus. If you're not focused, you can't just say focus harder. It's usually the removal of distractions
Mm.
that
Mm,
helps you focus. Being present's kind of the same way. You can't just force yourself into being present, but you can observe things around you and appreciate them. And suddenly, oh my God, Steve was present. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy there.
mm. Whereas you'll notice with your kids, they and young people, as all of us when we're kids, have an incredible ability to be 100% present in what they're doing at that point in time.
Yeah.
I think it's a skill we unlearn as we grow older in so many ways, because you carry all of these obligations around with you. But I always found, and you're gonna love the experience, because just that, the fact that you're forced to just be there doing something as silly as putting a tea towel around your neck and pretending that you're a princess, just because your daughter wants you to. I mean, you probably won't have that issue if it's a little boy, but the things that you end up doing as a dad, things you probably never think that you're going to, but it's very, very cool.
You know what that made me think of, Steve, is we actually had Bob Rotella tell us on the show. He asked us, is the way you're playing golf feel like work, or does it feel like play?
Mm,
I don't think there's much in between. I think it's pretty clear. I think if anyone listening asks themselves, I think it's a pretty clear answer. And to your point, I don't think anybody who's born and comes into the world needs to be taught how to play. Like, it's all you hear. Can I go
mm,
play? Dad, can you play with me? I want to go play with my friends, right? That's natural. That's in us.
mm.
So think about what happens when you get older and you try and work at a game instead of like, how can I make this fun? How can I play? You
Well, I
know?
mean, the whole fact with this sport is we say, I'm going to go and play golf.
Right.
That's like, it's in the phrase.
Right.
I think we quite often forget that's such a good point.
Although on the other hand as well, I'm guilty of this, and I've just had a little bit of a light bulb moment there, in that a lot of the time, especially when I'm going to practice, I go out and I say I'm going to go and work on my game, that's a really interesting way to put it, rather than focusing on, well, I'm actually going out to play. I'm not going to go and work. I'm going to go and play. So that's really interesting. And that's something, as I said, that I'm guilty of, just looking at it
Yeah,
as working on my game rather than
yeah.
playing.
And how often, do you hear people that talk about learning through play and gamifying things? Obviously, is a bit of a modern trend. Um,
Yep.
learning through play rather than learning through hard work and beating yourself down. Interesting,
Yeah,
Evan.
because
You've given us something to think about on this one.
yeah. Well, it's funny. I feel like every top coach that's been on our show has said something of that idea where, whether it's Sean Foley or George Gankis, like they're tour pros, they give them games and they have to do their best to get up and down 7 out of 10 times, or they start over, or they have some bet, or they have to do something silly. Otherwise, like you're not you're not replicating anything that you're doing. It's totally different, right? If we're just raking ball after ball, hitting 15 7-irons in a row, barely having a target, you you create no boundaries in your head of this pole or this flag is this, trying to hit it in between this because there's water right and there's OB left. If there's no simulation, and then we go to a chipping green and we hit to the same flag with the same club and the same thing, it's just autopilot,
Mm,
and I'm guilty of doing it too. But it is funny that it sounds, Andy, to your point, like it sounds like a burden to go work
Mm.
on the game, right? But if I'm going to go play and get better in the process, let's go compete and bet whatever after. Or I can't leave until I do this, and that way you have real pressure.
Yeah,
So
mm,
that's a good point.
yeah, and gamifying your practice is one thing that we've talked about a little bit, and because I use the stack system in to for swing speed, and we had Sasha on the show a couple of months ago, and we talked about his putting, the putting side of the stack, and that's exactly what
mm.
he's achieved with the stack putting, is that it gamifies your putting practice. And he talked about they're developing a wedge play a stack system as well. And the same thing, it's gamifying your practice, which A, makes it fun, but B, brings that element of pressure and the competition element to your practice, which I think is really useful.
Isn't it crazy to think about how many of us don't gamify our rounds?
It really
Like,
is.
like how much of our rounds are we just like in our swings versus like gamifying the game,
Yeah.
you know? It's kind of wild to think.
Yeah, it's the move from take it serious to make it fun, and it's
Hmm.
just a different lens. It's a different frame. Yeah, I'm actually quite looking forward to trying to reframe it a little bit more in that space next time out. I
And
think
by
it
the
can
way,
make a
going
big
back to the
difference.
original question of this whole conversation,
Mm,
remember, like, what is the mental game? I think one of my favorite parts about it, and this goes to everything, not just golf, is the power that a one word change has
mm,
on the experience you can have with something, right? Working on my game versus I'm going to go compete with a friend, right? Or um, trying to shoot my best score or keep it in play versus smash it down the left side, right? Like you can feel tentativeness
mm,
and weight in one statement, and you can feel excitement and lightness and offensiveness in the other. Like that,
Mm.
there's real power in that. And that idea has totally changed my life, is leveraging, um, I think there was some book, I forget the author, but it was this idea of emotions are your compass. So emotions, when you think something, there's a weight to it. So if you're feeling heavy, think about what you're thinking and maybe see if you can find a word that's less heavy. You can't go from like depressed to joyful, but the goal is to get less depressed. So, what words am I choosing? What thoughts am I thinking? Good chances they're probably pretty heavy with a lot of weight. What's another option? And then when you say something, oh, that feels a little lighter. Okay, that's how you know you're heading in the right direction, right? That's that. I love that stuff.
Yeah, that is a very, very good piece of advice. And I'm mindful of the time, Evan, because we've had you now for the best part of an hour, which has been phenomenal. But before we let you go, I just want to check in, Andy Walker. Is there any burning questions that you've got before we let our guest loose on the world for his day?
Oh, look, there was one thing that I wanted to, and it's around because we talked about competing interests of life, and we're all very busy, careers, family, etc. What strategies do you have, or main strategy you have to be able to fit everything in, as well as getting out in the golf course, and having that time available. Because I find that sometimes I've got a lot of time available and it's great, but then there are other times that like I've just got no time, and I get really frustrated with not being able to get out because life is so busy.
Mm. I don't know if it's answering it directly, but I find that, you know, when I think about my career specifically, and it impacts the other side of my life too, is I look back like 5 years ago and I had all of these super, not even conscious, very subconscious beliefs of what I deserved and what I could have and what I could do. And so, I've worked at some awesome companies and I wouldn't trade it because it's helped make me who I am.
Mm.
But it's funny looking back, like, and now I think about my life now. I really just started to say yes to things. And I really just started to align actions towards number one, I got really clear on what I wanted. Like I didn't even used to think that I could have a full-time podcast. Like that idea to me was a pie in the sky idea, a
Mm.
dream.
Yep.
But the crazy thing was when I started treating it like a full-time thing, it it didn't take too long to become one, right? Like we were actually bigger than I thought we were. I didn't even explore partnerships because I didn't think we were big enough. When I could have done partnerships 2 years prior to that.
Yep.
So I would just say, and again, I don't know if this even answers the question, but I will say that if you want to do something, and a lot of people don't know what they want to do, right? I followed my strategy to answer your original question was following my excitement. So if something fired me up, I tried to do more of it. And if something fired me up, I kept doing it. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten really good. If something doesn't fire me up, yes, we all have to do things that we don't like, but man, I'll pay someone $100 to do something that, like, for example, this wall behind me,
Yep.
this wall, like I talked about my mental golf type, hanging things and having them be perfectly even. And I just hit the thing in the wall and it doesn't line up. And now I have to do it all over again. And the nail fell. And I feel like, what is wrong with you? It just like drives me nuts.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So I paid someone to do it. And it's like, if you think about your day, less about what you're doing, but more about your energy and like what gives you energy and the things that take away your energy. Do you
Mm,
have to do them? Or can I delegate it? Can I get it off my plate? Can I tag team it? Can I think about doing something else and then my wife can take that on? Like, I don't know. I'd say that's probably the biggest thing because then it's less about like, what am I actually doing? Because like if I do something in the morning that really fires me up, like have a great conversation like this, and I get really productive morning, I'll go do errands and chores or whatever, but it like carries me through the day because I was really excited about what I did earlier, you know? So I think that's actually probably my biggest strategy is like managing my energy and letting excitement kind of be my North Star.
Yeah, and delegating or outsourcing those things that you don't like doing or don't want to do.
Yeah, hanging a TV is another one. I'll never do that again. And I judge myself for it. I'm like, what kind of dad are you going to be? My dad
Yeah,
can fix anything,
yeah,
right? But now it's like, no,
uh,
I'm not good at everything. We're not meant to be good at everything. So let someone else do
that's
it. This guy comes in, he hangs it in 10 minutes.
yeah,
That
yeah.
is a very, very good lesson learned. Um, awesome, awesome discussion, Evan. Such good information and such really good reminders, definitely for us, and I hope for all the pilgrims that are listening as well. But for people that want to chase you up and learn more about you and what you do, and obviously your own podcast, The Par Train, where can they find you, and where would you like to direct them?
Yeah, the podcast, wherever you listen to a podcast, will be there, the Par Train. I'd say social is probably the best next place. At the Par Train, our biggest audience is on Instagram, but we're everywhere that you like your socials, whether it's Twitter or TikTok, and YouTube's a big focus for us now. So we put all of our podcasts up there on video as well as my lessons and different challenges and different things. And then I guess the only other thing is I do an email newsletter every Monday. It's called The Train of Thought, where it's probably my most in-depth, not necessarily super golfy. I always relate it back to golf, but it's definitely like my freest reign, most me thing where it's just one nugget or thought for the week. It's very simple. I never send you an email other than like if we drop merchandise or something, people get first access to that who
Mm.
are subscribers. But that's kind of fun. Every Monday we send out just one quote and my take on it to kind of set you up for the week at thepartrain.com, totally free. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's awesome. We really appreciate you coming on the Missing Links Golf Show. And I think when you get back to the Par Train and have a chat with Serm, you can tell him that he's definitely missed out on one of the greatest episodes of any podcast ever recorded. So
I'll have to tell him that.
that's
And
one you've
also,
got
I want to
over him.
tell you guys before I
Yeah,
go,
yeah.
my wife and I, before she got pregnant, we decided to embrace our flexibility and did a bunch of travel. And we were in Europe and we were in Bali, and we always met Aussies when we traveled,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
they were always like the best.
yeah, we're everywhere.
So anytime an Aussie calls, I'm
Yeah,
in.
nice, nice. Well, we look forward to the Missing Links Golf Show Par Train Golf Challenge one day, when we can make that happen. So, you never know. We might come knocking on the door because we do like to travel as a nation.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Love it.
awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Pilgrims. I hope you got something out of that. I know we most certainly did, and we will be potentially back for another episode where we unpack the Olympic golf tournament. Just throw that one out there. You never know. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Ev. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Ev. Appreciate it.
Andy Walker, what a conversation that was.
Oh, just absolutely brilliant information. And what Evan said about what motivates him, at the end there throughout the day. We've recorded this, fairly early in the morning to for the time conversion across to the US, and we're just about to launch into our day. And what a start to the day to have a conversation like that.
Yeah, it is very cool. It's one of the things I always enjoy when we have our guests from the US is having these chats in the morning before we go about business. So it definitely charges the batteries. It's really really good. I always like a perspective shifter,
Yeah.
and I thought that the conversation that we had towards the end of that interview about flipping words and finding
Mm.
the use of language to reframe experiences, and obviously the light bulb moment for you that you probably want to talk about of converting work into play from a golf
Absolutely.
perspective.
Yeah. And it's
Just things
something
like
that I've
that.
never really thought too much about. It is part of my vernacular.
Yeah.
And I think it comes back to when I was young and trying to turn pro and play pro golf. I was always working on my game. And that's just,
Taking it super seriously.
yeah, I've always, that's how I've always articulated me going out to practice. And it becomes habit. But as we know, like words, they're not just words, they have so much meaning
Yeah.
behind them. And the use of particular words and language can have a massive impact on your experience in a certain situation.
They do. I mean, I think we also know that when you're performing really well, there's a lightness and a sort of a happiness and an enjoyment. And when you're performing poorly, there's this seriousness and heaviness.
Yeah.
So why would we set out with that approach of seriousness and heaviness from the get-go when
Yeah.
we know that good performance is light and happy and fun?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good perspective shifter, definitely.
Yeah, I also like the again it's another reminder of gamifying practice, making it fun. You're going out there to play. We work enough. We in our
Yeah,
careers
yeah,
we work,
yeah,
and we're doing that 9 to 5, sometimes longer, every day. So when we go out into the golf course, let's play. Let's have fun. Let's, enjoy it and, have that mental outlet that golf should be.
yeah. No, I think it's a really good one. The other good conversation I think that was really important was the reminder about the mental golf type. And, we've been through that on a number of occasions. We've been fortunate enough to have John Weir on the show to talk about it. But just as a reminder to the pilgrims that there are links in the show notes to access all that information on the mental golf type as well. And we thoroughly recommend you getting in there and use those links and check it out because you genuinely can learn a lot about yourself,
Yeah.
both on the golf course and off the golf course by going through that. And it's free to do the mental golf type fitting. And you don't even need to go beyond that. If you do, fantastic. But even just as Evan was saying, just getting that awareness of who you are and how you operate can actually make a massive difference.
Yeah. And that in particular has made a massive difference to how I go about golf and the understanding and awareness that I've got of my own behavior on
Mm.
the golf course
About
and
time.
giving. Yeah, I need a mental golf type for my life, but that's a different conversation. But just being able to have a framework to go out and play golf within is been a huge shift in perspective.
Yeah, it really has. And I think it will only continue to be so. There's a lot of lessons to learn out of that. I'm looking forward to listening to that episode back and just sort of once again going through all of those little pearls of, I guess you call it perspective shifters more than anything else,
Mm,
from
yeah,
Evan. And it's always good to hear someone that's been sort of going on a similar journey to what we have and learning similar things, probably doing it for a little bit longer, and just hearing the benefit of their experiences. And there's a lot of parallels, but there's also a few unique learnings and differences that he brings to the table as well. So that was very cool.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, Evan and Matt, I mean, they've been going 300 and something episodes. So
Yeah,
we're talking about celebrating 50, and
yeah,
yeah, they're
yeah.
they're
We got
well
a
and
few to go.
truly in over 300. So yeah,
Yeah, we got a
big
few to go.
yeah, got a few to go.
Anyway, Andy Walker, I think that's us for today. We are still searching for our next recording time, but as alluded to at the end of that episode, I would love to try to find a moment to unpack what's currently going on over in Paris at La Nationale Golf
Mm,
Course.
Yep.
Don't even think that's how you say it. But yeah, really interesting. As we record, day one has been played. So no spoilers just yet, but I think we should definitely try and get behind the microphones and unpack that one a little bit for the next episode.
Yeah, let's do that.
Sounds good. Alrighty, Pilgrims. Enjoy your day. It's been fun. Andy Walker.
Rock out, Pilgrims.